we start our inaugural Fadoodle forecast, we would just like to let you know we do not own any of the assets or are not paid by the Telegraph to use their Euro 2021 tournament predictor. In addition, we used us.soccerway.com to analyze all the results that each international team has played and the players they have in their squads. LITDB. Hello, you and all, and welcome to the inaugural Fadoodle forecast, where we predict upcoming phenomenons. We do not know at this moment in time, and you may want to correct us in the usual place for discussion below. So today is about the 16th edition of the UEFA European Championships. And today, we at Fadoodle version 2 have analysed the friendly results of all the 24 participating nations from September 2020 to the present day, and it gives us a good idea as to how the teams have been performing recently prior to the late May / early June matches to analyse our predictions for the upcoming European tournament. For anyone who is unacquainted with the European Football Championship, or soccer if you speak American, how it works is this. 24 of Europe's finest footballing nations go into one of 6 groups, each consisting of 4 teams. They play each other once, in this tournament's case all around Europe, and after each team has played each other once, after 90 minutes of a football match, the 2 best clubs automatically progress to the round of 16, with the 4 best third-place sides also getting advances into the round of 16. There on out, it is a simple, straight knockouts tournament, where 16 teams go to 8, then to 4, then to 2, and then 1 UEFA European champion, otherwise known as the champion of the Euro. Let's start with Group A. We predict that Italy will be first, Wales second, Switzerland third, and Turkey fourth. Firstly, Italy's performance from our already stated time period is nothing short of mesmerising. Then again, it is partially expected when you're dealing with not only a host nation, but also a nation who has won 3 World Cups in their time, with their last international defeat being in 2018 in a friendly against Portugal, at least as of the time of making this video anyway. But their results look very mixed in the sense of the superpowers level. On one hand, they absolutely annihilated San Marino 7-0 and Estonia 4-0 and beat Poland 2-0, but then they drew against Poland in another match. So their results are showing that overall they set to be one of the favourites, but maybe not the one that everybody expects will win, as they just seem to have a little tiny bit of down form still lingering in the squad. However, from 2nd to 4th, Group A could honestly go to any of the 3 teams, and we've put Wales in 2nd place. With recent victories over Mexico, Czech Republic, Finland, and Republic of Ireland, Wales have shown they have got some fight and are able to bring out the great results, despite losing to England 3-0 and Belgium 3-1. Indicating that they are not a superpower. Meanwhile, Switzerland have shown strong results, beating Ukraine 3-0 and Finland 2-0, and drawing against Germany twice in 2 matches of the UEFA Nations League, although they have already lost to sides in the same time period as we've stated earlier on, to Croatia, Spain, and Belgium. By minor scorelines, should we stress, but they're about the same near-abouts power of Wales. And lastly, for Group A, Turkey did beat Russia 3-2 and the Netherlands 4-2, and have only lost twice to Hungary. Though their draws against Latvia and Serbia twice makes us really unsure of Turkey's raw abilities going into Euro 2020. However, we'll be officially calling the tournament Euro 2021 because it got delayed because of, well, you already know.
You see, this could go anywhere, but we predict that Wales' firepower is the strongest out of the, dare we call them, mid-pack of nations in Group A. Thus, we're predicting them to have a fantastic run to get to second. But should they not be able to perform, Switzerland, out of those three teams, are the most consistent, and thus we're predicting them to finish third. However, Turkey have shown incredible form on some games, beating very strong opponents, yet drawing two very weaker ones. So again, the big factors for Group A are going to depend on if Wales and Turkey can turn up their form. But we predict through Wales having stars like Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, it will just be enough over 3 games to put them in third place. And Italy is at the top of the group because their record is just mesmerising. And they are one of the superpowers going into Euro 2021. Group B. First, Belgium, Denmark second, Finland third, and Russia fourth. Die Rotten Tufel have manifested an absolutely majestic starting 11, and it shows, as since September 2020, they've only lost to one international match, that being against England, though they also beat them on the return leg in the UEFA Nations League. They have got a whole host of star players that, whilst we could bore you, you already know by clicking on this video who they are. So their way of playing football is not even in the same ball game, in our opinion, as compared to the other nations within this tournament, and thus we are predicting them to dominate group. However, a bit more interestingly is Denmark we've selected to finish second, particularly for the fact that they are a host, meaning they will have some home advantage, even if stadium attendances will be less than ideally planned. Yet their records is like Belgium being very immaculate, taking down sides like England, Sweden, and Austria. Despite this, the one time they have lost to which are Belgium in their group, in terms of their international record. Throughout the 2 Nations League games they played against Belgium, they lost a combined 6-2 to Die Rotten Tufel. Thus, we are clearly predicting them to be in second place, but with such a strong immaculate record elsewhere, beating teams like England, who are tipped to be one of the favourites, we predict that Denmark have got enough of a good squad as a whole to take second place. By far, probably the underdog, or one of them, is Finland, going into their first ever Euros tournament. So I hope the people in Finland are ready to have a party for each of their 90 minutes. Meanwhile, this is what I predict Kimi Räikkönen's going to be like over these festive celebrations. Räikkönen notwithstanding, I think over 3 games, Finland have shown they can turn the wick on, especially with other teams essentially getting complacent over this tournament because of Finland's lack of international football tournament experience, as they have been able to beat both Republic of Ireland and France 2-0. Yet they have lost to some pretty big nations on the same token, losing to Poland 5-1, Switzerland 3-2, Sweden 2-0, and Wales 1-0. So we believe that Finland have the ability to pull an upset, and that will be just enough to power them through into third, especially if all the other teams get a bit complacent over Finland as a country. Consequently, this forecasts Russia to finish 4th in the group stages. Get it? Because Finland, the people are called the Finnish people. With their World Cup 2018 journey getting all the way to the quarterfinals, you may be surprised that we have placed Russia so far down. And whilst we will talk about this curse that seems to happen to teams that do well in World Cups and the following Euros tournaments, we predict Russia will experience this This is based on how they lost to Turkey 3-2 in a UEFA Nations League match, as well as drawing in matches against Moldova and Hungary. Again, no disrespect to Moldova or Hungary, but for a nation that got into the 2018 World Cup quarter-finals, you would expect to defeat those, especially considering they weren't even in the tournament. Yet, they are able to defeat Serbia and Hungary just in a 2-3 scoreline each, and draw against Poland, which shows that Russia has got some quality, but not found a way to unlock all this great raw potential. Group C. Holland first, North Macedonia second, Austria third, Ukraine fourth. In our opinion, the Netherlands are without a question one of the European football superpowers. They are the only hosts of Group C, so they do have an advantage. And despite losing to Turkey 4-2 in one game and Italy 1-0, they have shown pure quality, being able to defeat Poland 3-1 over 2 games and Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1. Not to mention, the Netherlands have made it to a lot of knockout rounds of World Cups and Euro tournaments in the past, including the, I guess, infamous for Netherlands, for Holland fans of football, the 2010 World Cup final in South Africa. They have got a load of raw individual ability. This will be great enough to power them into pole position for the knockout stages. However, we don't believe, with the results they've demonstrated, it'll be one to remember for the Holland fans, which is a shame, as their home kit absolutely deserves to bring some silverware to the Johan Cruyff Arena in Amsterdam. Contrastingly, North Macedonia are by far a nation that is really going to be an underdog, being divided in February 2019 to resolve some conflict between themselves and Greece. They have absolutely impressed the footballing world, managing to defeat Germany very recently in an international World Cup qualifying match, plus comfortably defeating other minnow nations like Georgia, Estonia, and Israel, proves that in a 3-game group stage, they have got the firepower to pull themselves into contention for advancing. Remember, each group has somewhere in the region of 50 to 75% of all the teams that enter that group advancing through, giving the chance for minnow nations like North Macedonia a real shot at making into the knockout phases of the tournament. Though we would be a little bit sketchy, they did lose to Armenia on one occasion in 2020-21, yet they managed to beat them on September the 5th, 2020. But how far North Macedonia will go in their inaugural European competition championship tournament is going to largely depend on whether if they're the same side that defeated Germany 2-1 or the side that lost to Romania 3-2 in 2022 World Cup qualifiers. So in practicality, we estimate they will finish anywhere from 2nd to 4th, as these slots will be very interchangeable. However, a team on the opposite end that usually is stronger, but we feel are a bit weaker than normal, is Austria. Sure, they've made it through, and they are into the League A of the UEFA Nations League, but they lost to a fellow League A nations team in Denmark 4-0. That is not very convincing. Thus, not versing any of the comparable opponents during this same time period makes us very sketchy over Austria, though they are a very consistent side, managing to keep a clean record, thus predicted them to slot into 3rd place nice and comfortable. And thus, this leaves Ukraine in 4th place for Group C. Sure, they did beat Spain 1-0, and they did beat Switzerland 2-1. However, in every other game of any opponent scale, they have either drawn or lost every other match, compared to Austria, who have been far more consistent in terms of getting wins and draws, thus putting Austria in 3rd and Ukraine 4th. and as a result of their worst record against a whole wide variety of teams, it seals their fate to the bottom of the Group C pile. Group D: England first, Czechia second, Scotland third, Croatia fourth. Croatia fourth? What are you talking about, Jellybean? Croatia fourth. They came second in the previous World Cup, going to the final. Now, we did touch upon this earlier with Russia, ironically enough, since the tournament where Croatia did so well was in Russia. But there's been a certain plague of football, especially for European nations, or even world ones as a whole, where if they do well at one World Cup, then the following European Championships, they tend to flack substantially. We'll take the last 3 World Cups as an example. Holland managed to finish third in the 2014 World Cup, yet failed to qualify for the 2016 Euros. In 2010, Holland also got to the final, yet for the 2012 Euros, they finished fourth in Group B. Or with France in 2006, being the finalists of that World Cup, yet coming fourth in the 2008 Euros group stages. Thus, whilst we think Russia will be the first team as part of this curse, the one where the curse will majoritarily strike will sadly be on Croatia, especially after losing Ivan Rakitic, who was one of their star players. We feel this will hit them very hard, especially with a side that is very mature and will need some refreshing in order to stay competitive, especially when you compare it to the other top 4 nations in the 2018 World Cup, France, Belgium, and England, who all have the same outright quality, if not greater, whilst also having more youthfulness in the teams, respectively. Plus, during our analysed time period, they lost both against Portugal and France, teams they are expected to compete against, with them drawing against Sweden, Slovenia, Turkey, and Armenia. Thus, whilst it'll be a very underwhelming tournament, we believe the curse will affect Croatia hard, resulting in them finishing fourth in Euro 2021's Group D. Contrasting this with England, who are certainly one of the tournament's favourites and have an absolute fire away kit, we have to say they have had an incredible record, though not the best one. They have managed to beat sides like Poland, Austria, and Wales, though they have lost to Belgium once and have drawn against Denmark, putting them in a very strong position, but not the strongest. But compared to the other teams in Group D, we believe this will be enough to take the top spot of this group. For second and third in Group D, this one could honestly go either way, but we've decided to put Czechia. Now, Scotland have beaten Czechia on multiple occasions within the past year-ish. However, Scotland's results in comparison are far more consistent, but there are less wins against teams of a similar scale, whereas Czechia have managed to pull out more impressive results, i.e. wins, just at a cost of a what we like to call do or die attitude, meaning Czechia will either go out and win the match or most likely will lose said game. With this tournament only having 3 games compared to a traditional football league of in the 30s or 40s, we predict this will be enough to have Czechia power themselves through into second place. Having said that, we are not 100% saying that Scotland will finish third. They could finish second, but because Scotland are more consistent in the fact that they've only lost twice 1-0 and drawn against Netherlands and Austria 2-2, they have not really pulled out many miraculous results, which in a tournament like this, where there's only 3 games in a group stage, you need to demonstrate that you can turn on the players' abilities to perform at an extremely high level for short bursts of time in certain moments, thus putting the Scots into third place in Group D. Group E: Spain first, Poland second, Sweden third, Slovakia fourth. By far, Spain have had an absolutely monstrous record, only losing once to Ukraine 1-0 and beating Germany 6-0, and have drawn against teams like Portugal, Netherlands, and Switzerland. This is, especially when you factor in they previously beat Ukraine 4-0. Spain, in our opinion, are one of the favourites to do well in this tournament, like Belgium. And thus, despite not having any Real Madrid players for the tournament, this will not affect Espana that much, in our opinion, and they will comfortably dominate Group E. Which leaves us for the fight of progression into the knockout rounds. But Poland are a very peculiar one. On one hand, they have some very well-known and talented players in Lewandowski, Milik, and Szczesny, but their record is very much like a roller coaster, in the sense that they're able to beat Bosnia 5-1 and Ukraine 2-0 and draw against Italy, yet lose to England and Netherlands 2-1 and draw against Hungary 3-3, indicating that their performance is overall about the middle of the pack, but they can turn on the wick. However, they seem to be a little bit more balanced, to the point where they are consistent, but lean more on the side of pulling up those sensational scorelines and wins, rather than going for broke only. Thus, with this tiny little bit of consistency, we predict they'll be able to outmuscle Sweden, though this could honestly chop and change between second and third. As Sweden are very similar to Poland, but a lot more extreme, maybe on the same level as Czechia in that respect, with how they either win or lose. Able to defeat Croatia and Russia, but then losing to France, Portugal, and Denmark. But keep your eyes on the blue and yellow, as they could potentially steal second from Poland. Lastly, for Group E, Slovakia is the complete opposite to Poland and Sweden, being more consistent. And whilst on paper being consistent is never a bad thing, Slovakia have never really demonstrated within the past year of their matches their ability against tough opponents, leading us to highly doubt their overall ability. When you factor in they've lost to Czechia, Scotland, and Israel, this places them at the bottom of Group E, despite triumphing against Russia, but this ultimately says it all, the following day drawing against Bulgaria. Group F, France first, Hungary second, Germany third, Portugal fourth. The Group of Death, as touted by many pundits, has got a team that only have lost one match in our studied time period, that being to Finland 2-0. They are the reigning World Cup champions and finished second in Euro 2016, indicating to us that France have got a fantastic chance at winning this tournament altogether. And thus we believe, especially when you factor in they've been able to consistently win and have loads of quality and been able to beat sides like Belgium and Spain, we believe they will comfortably take first in this. However, you must be thinking, Jelly Bean, you've lost your marbles. Hungary to finish second. Well, this is the thing. Their last loss was on the 6th of September 2020 against Russia. Since they have qualified or had a chance of qualifying for the Euros, the Hungarian squad have drastically turned their performances around, being a far more consistent team. They've been able to draw matches against Poland and Russia whilst beating Serbia and Turkey, plus battering teams you would expect to traditionally hold a good fight against them, thus giving the impression that Hungary can pull off a bit of an upset. The only real question, though, in the fatality group is, can they do it against the giant names, as Poland, Russia, and Turkey are realistically the toughest names the revitalized Hungarian football team have versed, though we think over 3 games an upset is more on the cards. Likely than not. However, you all must think we are crazy for placing Die Mannschaft ahead of Portugal, who have only lost one match to France 1-0? Well, there's a few reasons why. First of all, their team is filled with quality and they are playing for sides that, in Europe at least, are, according to the paper, being the UEFA Champions League, are the best in Europe. These include Timo Werner, Antonio Rudiger, and Ilkay Gundogan. I hope we said those correctly. Showing that they have got some superstar talent on the team that isn't aging and that knows how to achieve success, at least on paper, through results. However, they did lose to Spain 6-0, which seems that the Mineshaft are certainly not at their strongest they've been in recent times. Coupled the fact they've drawn against opponents like Spain, Switzerland twice, and even Turkey, leads to suggest that this German national team are not going to be toppling the title anytime soon. However, we do believe they have got enough power in them to defeat Portugal because they are consistent. Despite this immaculate record and drawing against Spain and France on a separate occasion, but Portugal also drew against Serbia. And whilst they are probably one of certainly a strong side, and maybe one of the favourites, Portugal will most likely take second. However, against the big teams, they have not demonstrated that they've been able to beat them. And in Group F, this group is entirely composed, or at the very least 75%, of what we would regard as strong nations, that being themselves Germany and France. Well, they've lost to France and drawn against one, so that's one weak match out the way. Hungary could pull an upset, so there goes 2 games. And Germany, well, most likely will get a draw out of them. Portugal could win. So, in our timeline, we are forecasting that Portugal will be the unlucky victims. And whilst there is not so much a curse for teams in the Euros, so to speak, we predict that this kind of plague that we've seen with the teams of Croatia and Russia will also impact Portugal. We were going to make this a duology video, however, we've decided to condense it down to one, as believe it or not, we'll be able to rapid fire through the knockouts tournament stages because there are matches that we really feel we don't need to explain too much. However, now it's time to decide the third place teams. As you may or may not be aware, in the Euros, a concept this has been introduced since 2016's European Championships, we want to say, but please post it in the comments if we're wrong, is that the 4 best third place squads advance to the round of 16. For our Euro 2021, we are forecasting that the results will be Germany first, Switzerland second, Sweden third, Austria fourth, eliminated Finland and Scotland. Start with the Germans. Now, we are predicting them to be first out of these third place teams because we are predicting that Group F, due to the high caliber of players in that group compared to any other, it will force these teams to score as many points as possible and pushing them to their limits, meaning they will score more points on average compared to every other team in the group stages. When you factor in Germany have also got a lot of individual talent, this will place them first. Though honestly, they may be second, depending on how well Joachim Löw is able to galvanize the squad. As already stated, Switzerland are a very consistent team. Sure, they don't get loads of big results, but they are a consistently stable team when it comes to results. Thus, we believe they'll be able to take home second place. Third will be Sweden, because they are very much a do-or-die team. And when the pressure will get turned on, because it will, especially from match day 2 onwards, when you're going up against Spain and Poland and Slovakia, it'll be enough to get Sweden into the round of 16. Finally, Austria are a consistent team, but not at the moment, sadly, we believe, to the same standard as Switzerland. They are slightly behind, and debatably even Sweden in that respect. Thus, we think they will just get through, but they may not. Sorry, Austrian football fans. Finland and Scotland, it would be amazing to see either or both advance through, though sadly we do not believe this, mainly because they are very much an underdog-like team, and sure they may be able to pull out an odd result against, say, England for Scotland's case, or Russia stroke Denmark in the case of Finland, it will ultimately prove that they just simply do not have enough raw individual talent and squad connectivity to grab enough points necessary to keep them in the hunt. Thus, we sadly will be saying goodbye to these teams. So, with that said, we have now got our 16 teams. However, the first few matches, we're actually predicting about 5 of them, based on how it is all shuffled out, will end up being this narrative. One bigger club will take on a smaller country, and in the end, the bigger team will just have enough chemistry and individual talent and progress to the quarterfinals. The matches will be Italy versus North Macedonia. This is because Italy's record is very, very strong, and North Macedonia have never made it, at least in our knowledge, to a European football tournament, or certainly not in recent memory. Thus, we're predicting a bit of a blowout here, maybe in the 3-0 region. As for Belgium and Sweden, whilst we think Sweden will be pushing all out in the group stages, they will start to get a little bit fatigued by the time the knockout stages rolls around, especially when you're going up against Belgium, one of the strongest sides of the tournament. France versus Switzerland will be a bit closer due to Switzerland being a more consistently stable side, and France will definitely not be able to rest on their laurels, but we predict that as soon as France start a bit of a goal spree, that will essentially psychologically be the end of the tournament for Switzerland. As for Spain versus Austria, Spain's record is just unstoppable, one of the best. Yeah, going up against Austria, who have really struggled in the past year, it's pretty easy to state that Spain will advance to the quarterfinals. Lastly, the same principle will happen with England versus Hungary. Look, we love putting Hungary through, and we would hope that they could defeat England for the narrative, but again, England are one of the strongest sides, so yeah, this is going to be a bit of a blowout, we sadly believe. Now, let us proceed into the more interesting round of 16 matches. Yes, we at Fadoodle version 2 are forecasting that Wales will be going out in the round of 16 to Denmark. This is because Wales, while showing they have got quality, it cannot be activated all the time, whereas Denmark have demonstrated they've been able to put it consistently. For example, within our study time period, Denmark only lost twice, and that being to Belgium, with one match being 2-0 and one match being 4-2, as already stated. The only other draw they had was against England, and every other game was a win, and some of them were quite convincing. They defeated Austria 4-0, they defeated Iceland, who went to the 2016 Euro quarterfinals, 3-0, they even beat England 1-0, they beat Sweden 2-0, Iceland again 2-1, and Israel 2-0. Oh, not to mention Moldova 8-0. Thus, showing that Denmark right now has got a great, strong team together. Whereas by the smallest of margins, Wales have had 2 draws thrown into their mix, but have managed to win every other game that wasn't against a, should we say, socially accepted big team. The teams they did draw to were the Republic of Ireland and the United States, which, whilst the United States would be a reasonable mid-table team within the Euros, the Republic of Ireland failed to qualify, and ultimately that's not a great look for Wales. In addition, Wales's victories are not by a vast amount of goals. Their matches against Finland, Bulgaria, twice actually, a separate one against Republic of Ireland, Mexico and Czechia were all 1-0 victories, with the only convincing win being a 3-1 victory over Finland. Thus, with how Denmark and Wales are very consistent, Denmark are able to produce more whilst being consistent, and that will push them through into the quarter-final. Secondarily, we've got Holland versus Germany. Now, a lot of you are saying in your heads, well, surely it's going to be Holland. Sure, both sides are very similarly matched. We would not blame you for thinking that Netherlands have the upper hand. After all, they were able to beat Poland on multiple occasions and have only lost to Italy 1-0, which is their only other big team loss. In fact, the only one. Okay, they did have another match against Italy where they drew, and they drew against Spain as well, but ultimately, Netherlands showed to be more consistent. However, the 4-2 defeat against Turkey is not brimming us with loads of confidence. And while sure, North Macedonia 1-2 victory can be seen as very humiliating, when you actually do the maths and actually look at the game, North Macedonia only managed to get a goal in the 85th minute, compared to the Turkey versus Netherlands situation, where Turkey managed to get three goals, 3 of them, before the Netherlands could respond with an extra goal or 2, and then Turkey got another. Plus, Germany's big defeat, being Spain, are one of the tournament favourites, so you could argue this is not acceptable for them, but you could at least understand. And remember, we're only talking about the round of 16 here. We're not talking about who's going to win the tournament. Thus, we feel that Germany are just a little bit more consistent, and we believe because Germany have had to, quote unquote, work to get into this space, they've not had it handed on a silver platter, unlike Holland, that little bit of willpower will help the Germans to overcome the Hollanders. Sorry, Holland, you got a lovely home jersey. We have gone for Czechia to defeat Poland. You might be saying, but Jellybean, they have Robert Lewandowski. How? Well, Czechia have demonstrated that against reasonable opponents, they can score a lot of goals. Their World Cup qualifying match against Estonia see them win 2-6. All their matches against Slovakia, a team that have already qualified, is a 1-3 victory for them, showing that they are above the quote-unquote weaklings in this tournament. However, when Czechia lose, it's only by 1 goal. Their 2 matches against Scotland had a negative goal difference by 1. Their Germany defeat was by 1, who were a, should we say, formidable opponent, and their Wales defeat was only by a goal as well. Not to mention they managed to draw against Belgium, meaning that compared to Poland, who have taken on stronger teams and have sadly lost also by 1 goal, the difference is that when Czechia turn themselves on, they can really evolve above their class, or standards, if you will. And thus, I think it'll be a bit of a shock, but Czechia will defeat Poland. With that said, we are now down to the final 8 teams. This will be a predominantly very close contest from here on out. But the first match, sadly, I think will be a bit of a blowout. Czechia, I'm so happy you've made it this far, but you're going up against France. And, well, France are the World Cup winners, have got an insanely talented squad, and have had an immaculate, consistent record. Thus, I think France will triumph over Czechia. But they will be one of the love stories of this tournament. Now, things get very hard to decipher, as our second quarterfinal is Belgium versus Italy. We've selected Belgium to win. It is true that Italy have not lost a single game during our time period studied, and Belgium did lose 2-1 to England. However, every time Belgium shows up, there are, generally speaking, at least 2 goals that they can provide. They've been able to get 3 against Wales, 4 against Denmark, 2 against England, 2 against Switzerland, 2 against Iceland, and 2 against Denmark, not to mention their 5-1 triumphant smashing over Iceland. Compare this to Italy, where, okay, they did comfortably beat Moldova 6-0, bar that every other game, with the exception of their 4-0 victory over Estonia and 1-0 against Holland, have consistently been 2-0 affairs. Thus, in the realms of these superpower teams, Belgium have got just that little bit more ability if they are a bit more switched on than usual. And I know we're talking about very minor differences, we understand, but when you're talking about the quarterfinals onwards, you're thinking about who's going to win the whole tournament. And sadly, we believe it will not be Italy. But this could honestly go either way. Thirdly, on our European Championships quarterfinal itinerary is Germany versus Denmark. The Mein Schaft have had to go through a really rough and tragic journey to get here, going through the slaughterhouse that was Group F, and then having to go up against Holland. This is very draining on the players, as the harder you have to work, the less stamina you will have for the upcoming matches. Remember, this entire tournament takes place over a whole month, assuming all the matches happen exactly on schedule. Compared this to Denmark's route, who, okay, have had to go up against Belgium in their group, but they've only had to go up against, no disrespect, Finland and Russia in their group stages, and defeat Wales, who, no disrespect again to Wales, but are not on the same level as France or Germany, or in our case, a revitalized Hungary squad. Thus, our little shock is that the Germans will bow out of the Euros at the quarter-finals, losing to Denmark, but this game could very well go into extra time or penalties. Lastly, it is Spain versus England, and this one, oh dear, this is so tough to decide. Now, España have had more draws. They have drawn against Germany, Portugal, Netherlands, Switzerland, and Greece through the time we've studied, and have lost to Ukraine. Compare that to England. Okay, they've lost to Belgium once and Denmark once as well, and drew against Denmark as well. I wonder who England are dreading to verse going into this tournament. Sarcasm aside, every other match has been a win, meaning England can more consistently put out the wins. In fact, most of their matches through the time studied, they scored 2 goals, with the only exception being on the 5th of September 2020 when they took on Iceland, only managing to beat them 1-0. Thus, we believe England would have enough firepower to knock out Spain. And with that, it is on to the semi-finals, as La France, the French, take on the Belgians. This one, like Belgium versus Italy, could go either way. Both squads are incredible, both teams are highly consistent, and both are in fantastic form. But we've decided to go for Belgium. Now, this isn't so much a numerical measurement or anything. However, Belgium have actually never won a European or footballing trophy of any major substance, with their best performing in the Euros being one runners-up spot. We believe, according to our sources, in 1980, but correct us if we're wrong. Compared to France, who have won one recent World Cup
and many, many more, including one on home soil back in 1998, among many other achievements. But we feel this is the tournament where things will be a little bit upset. Sure, victory would be more easily decidable provided any of these countries were hosts. But ironically, they are not, and thus there is no real way of splitting these two sides, unless if you want to really start getting into the analytical aspects of every single game. But we believe that Belgium will come out on top, though this could be France either way. However, we've got another semi-final to attend to. Denmark versus England, a battle of Nordic nations, as well, England is north of Europe. Well, used to be a part of Europe anyway. However, we believe in this case, despite England's immaculate record, that they have not been able to defeat Denmark for a reason. And this is not just a one-off. This happened twice during our time period. The first game was a draw when they went to Denmark, but when they went to Wembley Stadium and played that match in the UEFA Nations League, Denmark beat England 1-0. We believe at Fadoodle version 2, many people are forgetting how strong Denmark have been, and we believe that they will defeat England. Also, for those of you who are unaware, England typically choke in tournaments around their semi-final stage. So it is very likely this will happen again, and thus we predict the final will be Belgium versus Denmark. Although, through this weird hierarchical chain we've created, Denmark have always been able to beat England. However, Belgium have been able to beat Denmark consistently. Denmark's only team they've lost to during our time period sampled was Belgium. In a weird formulaic way, Belgium will finally take their first ever European Championship title, and thus, for the 16th edition of the UEFA European Championships, Belgium will be the victors in Euro 2021 due to sheer quality and consistency being able to power them through the whole tournament. If you have sat through and listened / watched to the entirety of this video, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, we are genuinely really grateful for your patience. However, we would like to hear now from you all. How do you feel? Do you feel that these predictions are believable? Do you feel like it's complete rubbish and the final's going to go down from Finland versus Scotland for that crown? What do you think? Let us know in the comments below and do all the usual engagement e-begging stuff that we content creators always ask our people to do. With that said, we are Fadoodle version 2. I have been Jellybean, and we are at Fadoodle are forecasting that Belgium will defeat Denmark in the UEFA Euro 2021 final. Take care, everyone.